What's up, guys? I have a team deathmatch on the map Impact, and today I'm going to talk about some team deathmatch tips that you can use to increase your chances of success for winning. I think team deathmatch has got to be one of the most popular game types on Gears of War 4, and that's due to its simplicity. But despite its simplicity, I would say that there are specific strategies that you can employ to be more successful in the game type, and I'm going to go through some basics and specifics in this video, which hopefully will help you. I also would say in terms of the gameplay that I do practice what I preach, and you'll see that some of the things that I talk about are things that I'm actively doing in this specific match. So hopefully that will help illustrate some of the points I'm trying to make. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The first point I want to make is kind of an analogy, and that would be that team deathmatch to me is kind of like a marathon, as opposed to, say, a game type like execution, which I would consider to be a sprint each round. And that's because, let's say, pushing the analogy forward, in execution, you know the other team is not going to spawn when they die, so you're going to continue your push and collapse in on them after fighting for the power weapons and map control. And while you do need to fight for the power weapons and map control in team deathmatch at the beginning, I would say that there's actually a point where it would be detrimental for you to continue pushing and to continue fighting because of the constant flow of team deathmatch and the respawns. You can see where I'm posting now. This is the point where I would not push any further because it would just be too difficult. The other team would pick me off. They have spawn protection, and there's not really anywhere for me to break in. So that is one of the key differences between team deathmatch and other non-respawn game types. So you can see I do what I believe to be the correct move. I back off and just kind of maintain map control, and you'll see that I maintain power weapon control, which is the next point I want to get into. One of the major keys for success in team deathmatch is controlling the map and hence controlling the power weapons that come with map control itself. This will give you access to better angles and to weapons that you can use to actually push the enemy team if you're confident in your push game. And that's really important if you want to win team deathmatch. Because the other team will have several chances to respawn, it's important that you maintain both map control and the power weapons to ensure that you're successful throughout the whole round and not just the beginning. So that's what I mean when I say there is a such thing as pushing too much. If you push deep into their spawn and they pick you off with their spawn protection, or because it's too defensible of an area for you to have been pushing, you'll open up an opportunity for the other map to get, the other team to get map control and hence the power weapons, and you'll be in a much more difficult situation. So you can see here I just kind of hold the middle ground, so to speak, and I use the power weapons to pick up some good kills, which is key. Now, I just want to go a little more in depth with the power weapons. It's important to note that in Gears 4, they are on a 30-second after use timer, and what that means is when a player has used up all the ammo for a power weapon, or they have wasted the grenades, that power weapon is going to respawn after 30 seconds, and that's not actually a long time to be waiting. So in team deathmatch, you can have a lot of goes with power weapons if you're the one holding them. But at the same time, that after use timer means that a power weapon might not spawn for a very long time, so long as the player who has it chooses not to dispose of all the ammo. So that's another area where you can be really strategic, because if your team has map control like I do, you can kind of just keep going through the power weapon ammo and using it to pick up some kills. But there could be hypotheticals where, for instance, if your team has lost map control but you have more respawns and you also happen to have the power weapon, where it might be advantageous just to hang on to one shot of the weapon so it can't be respawning, and that essentially denies the other team of power weapon and makes it harder for them to push you, because on top of having map control, power weapons are also really important to be getting kills, as you're seeing right now in the gameplay. The next topic I want to kind of cover is the idea of spawn trapping and breaking from spawn trapping. As you can see, the other team really put themselves in some poor positions this round, where they were just essentially in spawn playing around their sniper the whole time, and that's extremely detrimental. And a lot of people do ask me, what do you do about spawn trapping? How do you break out of it? And let me start by saying it's an incredibly tough situation, and it's going to inevitably happen. But there are strategies you can use to break free from spawns. The problem with Team Deathmatch in Gears 4 is that there are only 2 points of spawns, and that's incredibly simple for players to kind of determine where the other team as a whole is positioned and where they're going to come and go from. There's normally only one or two or three, sorry, points that you could actually exit a spawn, and that makes it really challenging once players have you blocked off. So if you find your team backed up in spawn, first and foremost, you do have spawn protection, so you're going to want to use that to push out as far as you possibly can to gain grounds. But sadly, you'll notice that the spawns are so big in Gears 4 that by the time you've pushed out as far as you can and your spawn protection is up, you're probably actually still just at the edge of where spawn is, which makes it, just very difficult to continue to push out. So another strategy to kind of alleviate this is keeping in mind the fact of where your teammates are on the map and where the enemy team is on the map in order to break out of just a portion of the map itself. Because one problem is that I find players will mindlessly just run wherever they want, but you really need to strategically think about how you are going to push out. So just to give an example, in the match you're seeing, there is a lot of emphasis on the sniper area directly across from where you're seeing. And that's where the enemy team has been putting all their resources, and I don't think that was the correct move, because that's where my whole enemy team is, and they must have known from all the gunfights that are happening. So meanwhile, the people who are pushing out here are few and far between. Now, I did just pick off 2 people, and obviously 2 is more than 1, but in that case, they didn't know I was there. But their team is failing to put people in different areas of the map, and instead they are all just focusing the majority of their efforts on one side, and that's not going to help you break out of spawn. You need to at least start by securing one area other than spawn itself, and that will at least give you access to some angles. And obviously it's easier said than done, I will not lie. It's difficult, but you need to try to push out with your spawn protection and really think about where it is you're going to push out. Push out with purpose is the best way I can put it. It's also good to note that there's a lot of secondary weapons that are often near the spawn area that you shouldn't overlook. So things like a shock grenade, bolt talk, retro lancer, and those things can pack a nice surprise if you are having trouble breaking out of spawn. So definitely don't overlook those and use those to your advantage when you're trying to push out. Now I also want to talk about spawn flipping, because I think that's another strategy you can use to break a spawn trap. If you push out to the enemy team spawn enough, the spawns will actually flip. And this in Gears 3 it explicitly told you when the spawns flipped, but in this game you actually have to keep an eye out for the sound effect. It happens to be the same sound effect that happens when the other team runs out of respawns. So it's exactly the same sound when spawns flip. If you're not sure what that sound is, just pay attention next time you're playing Team Deathmatch, because information is power, obviously. And it's important to know where players are going to be coming from. So if you manage to push out a spawn and get the spawns to flip, that'll create a sort of disarray that your team can use as an opportunity to break out of a spawn trap, because you'll essentially have some of your players still stuck in their original spawn, and you'll have players from your team on the other side of the spawn who can get angles and kind of help you break out. At the same time, you have to look at the other side of the coin, and if you're spawn trapping a team, obviously not the most well-regarded tactic, but if you're spawn trapping a team, you can't maintain that spawn trap if you push too far into their spawn and actually flip them. So that's going back to the marathon analogy of not pushing in too much. Right now, everybody on the other team, they're failing to push for the power weapons, first off, but they're also we're not pushing into their spawn so much that the spawns are flipping, and that makes it really easy to know that they're all coming from one area, and it makes it really easy to pick up some kills, as you can see that I'm doing. The last topic that I want to touch on before this video ends is the man up rule. So Team Deathmatch in Gears of War 4 operates on the man up rule, and what this means is that the team that has the most spawns by the end of the round will win if the time runs out. And you can strategically use this to your advantage in a couple ways. Obviously, first and foremost, it means that if you are ahead in respawns, you do not have to feel obligated to push. That doesn't necessarily mean sit back, but that means that if all things are equal, except the other team has a sort of defensive advantage, then don't feel like you need to push. It might seem counterintuitive, but in a scenario where there's 2v4, it's going to be on the 2 people to make a move. so you can essentially force the hand of the other team if you have more respawns, and you won't actually have to push yourself. Also keep that in mind, once again, on the flip side, because if you are the team that is down on respawns, it means that at some point you're going to have to make a push, so be mindful of the time. Not all game types in Gears of War 4 operate on the man up rule, so this is something that's it's unique to Team Deathmatch, and definitely an area that you can strategize on. Anyway, that's going to be about it for the tips I have for Team Deathmatch. I hope this video was helpful, and feel free to share some of your own tips in the comments below.